Hey y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. I hope you like the new theme music. Wanted to funk things up a little bit and shorten it so we can dive into analysis a little quicker. The weather is improving up north here, so hope to be out of the garage and out on the deck pretty soon. More pleasant environments for you to look at, and I can smoke cigars in style. Today we're going to be looking at the Louisiana Derby. It's the last Derby prep from the fairgrounds. And now we're getting serious. These are 100-pointers, and it's a full field of 12, so it looks like a really good betting race. So let's take a look and see what we got. The Louisiana Derby is a Grade 2 stakes for 3-year-olds, run at the fairgrounds at 1 mile and 3/16. And if we look at the configuration to the right, we see that they're going to start this one right at the top of the backstretch. So there's plenty of time for the horses to get into position, and there's no impediments towards that. Because it's at the fairgrounds, we always have to note that it has a very long stretch, and it does favor later runners as opposed to early pace setters. So it's very difficult to wire up a race around 2 turns at fairgrounds. And there's not a lot of early speed in this race, but we do want to make that note because it's important when you consider who we've got to look at. Number 1 hole is Shopper's Revenge, and he is, I'm going to give you the morning line odds as I have them now. He's at 12-1, and he's trained by Steve Asmussen, got Ricardo Santana on him. He's by Tappet with Taylor the Cat underneath, so I mean, everything's points for this race as being not a problem. Debuted at 3 pretty impressively with a 5.5 length win, 5.25 win rather. And looked pretty good doing so. I mean, basically won for fun, all on the lead the whole way. The next race around at 1 mile and 1/16, though, he really kind of threw in a clunker. Didn't break very well, and really didn't seem terribly interested in the race, and he hung in the stretch. Now, that's 2 times in his career he's done that. So I don't know if it's sometimes his horse breaks poorly, sometimes he doesn't. I mean, he is a Tappet, so maybe there's some issues there. But really the big concern is that your second start at 3, you definitely want to build on what you did in the first, and this one did not do it. And if it had been his first race, you could forgive it because you could say, well, maybe he needed one, but he had his race, and I just didn't fire in the second one. So there's some talent here, but I'm going to toss him, because he looks kind of hard to trust, and in a race of this nature, I don't think he's a significant player here. Number 2, Instant Coffee, hasn't done anything wrong. We've been waiting for this horse to run since LeCompte. As we've noted before, that victory in LeCompte has really been flattered by the fact that Confidence Game came back to win the Rebel. 2 Fills has been a competitive 3-year-old. And it just flatters his form and just gives you the idea that this one is a really significant competitor. He's been improving steadily, and I expect nothing less in this next race. The only question I might have is how he does on a layoff, as he's never been on the bench before for quite this long. But if that's the only thing we have to worry about, I don't think we have too much to worry about. So he's a definite use. He's at 2-1. He's the deserving favorite, and he's a win candidate for me for sure. Curly Jack is one of the classic variety. We've talked about it before. I think he's a plateauing 3-year-old. His buyers seem to be mired in the 80s. He doesn't seem to be moving forward. And in that last race in the Risen Star, that was pretty much a disaster. Nothing really went terribly right for him. There were a couple of question marks or red flags for me. Number 1, a lot of times when horses come off layoffs, they can be really keen out of the gate, and they falter late. And that's not too big a deal, so you expect the next race they'll run better. But also that can happen when a horse is outclassed. He's got to run faster than he wants to early just to keep up and to maintain his position. And I tend to think that that's what we're dealing with Curly Jack. So, while we've had some defections from the Risen Star, I don't think this field is quite as good as the Risen Star was. It's still pretty good. And so I'm thinking class-wise, this one might be up against it. And I think he's going to be his price is going to be too low for me. Right now he's at 12-1, but the fact that Amos trains him and what he did at 2 is probably going to have that bet down. And I don't want to use him because I don't think he's a factor in this race, so he's a toss. Sun Thunder is, I've made no bones in the past about how much I like this horse. He continues to get better with every start. More importantly, his pace numbers are getting better. He's not just sitting in the back and waiting to make one big run. He is getting more forwardly placed in races. Now, I know if you look at the Risen Star and you see 12, 11, 10, well, keep in mind that it was a 14-horse field, and there was a pretty congested early on. But if you, by the pace numbers, he's getting more forwardly placed than he has been in previous efforts. So that shows me a willingness to want to be more involved in a race. Secondly, he's improving buyer-wise. He's improving. His class level is going up with every race, and those are all signs that a horse is on the improve. So I look for him to run another nice effort, make another jump in this race, and the distance shouldn't be a problem at all. I think it's exactly what this one wants. So to me, Sun Thunder's a liberal use and a win candidate at 5-1. I think that's a square price. And I will be using him on all my tickets. Disarm is, we noted him earlier. This one sends some mixed signals. He's by Gunrunner with Tappet underneath, trained by Steve Asmussen, Joel Rosario riding, and Winchell Thoroughbreds as his owners. I mean, my God, if this horse doesn't scream Derby contender. 2 turns is obviously not going to be a problem for this one, but there's some mixed signals here, and let me get to it. First of all, he showed some talent and some promise at Saratoga, and beat Arthur's Ride, who's a pretty good 3-year-old. Not going to see him on the Derby Trail, I don't think, and Krupe, who we saw in the Risen Star. The problem is he had a little setback, and they had to take him out of training, and they brought him back in February, and he ran, an okay race, I guess you could say. Two Eagles River is a pretty good 3-year-old. So's Funny Uncle. He just kind of had that. Asmussen has been noted to say that he needed a race, and I think he probably did. He ran without a lot of interest late, and sometimes that happens when horses come off long layoffs. I'll expect him to be better in this next race, but the thing that bothers me is his work tab. Now, I noted before in the Rebel Stakes with Gun Pilot that it looked to me like Asmussen was rushing that one along, because after his allowance race with Instant Coffee, he didn't give him the customary 2-week break. He kept working him in training. And I think that was because they had Derby fever with him, and they wanted to move him along and get him up to speed where he was behind some of the other 3-year-olds. Obviously, it didn't work out very well. And while Gun Pilot is a nice horse, I don't think he's going to be back on the Derby Trail. I'd be very surprised if we see him in the Arkansas Derby. So I see that, I remember that, and I look at this race and what happens. He runs on the 19th, the 27th, they put him right back into another work, and it was pretty dull, 23 out of 25. And the next 2 are 5 and 6 furlongs. Those are stamina building works. And it looks to me like they're trying to rush this one along, just like they did with Gun Pilot. Now, I think this one has talent, but I'm just worried that his training's a little hasty, and they really don't have a choice because they're kind of running out of options, and he either has to factor in this race or not be on the Derby Trail at all. So I am going to toss him. And the reason being more than anything is, given what I've already told you, also he's at 10-1 on the morning line, and given the red flags I see, I think that's a prohibitive price. So I'm going to throw him out. And he may beat me, but I'm not counting on it. Kings Barnes, on the other hand, is I think on the upswing, and I think the future's really bright for this one. Won his first race around 1 turn at Gulfstream pretty impressively. Built on that, and in his next race won even more impressively. and all the numbers indicate his pace numbers are getting better. His class level increased at a level higher than the prior two races. In other words, he's running at a higher class level than what he's racing against. And he did that 2 starts in a row. That is a horse on the upswing and on the improve. And I'm expecting definitely another jump here. Now, the only question mark I have is Uncle Mo on top. A mile and 3/16 might be a little long. But he does have Tappet on the bottom, and that may make up for it. And he's got plenty of class, and he's got plenty of talent. So I'm going to use this one liberally. I think he's going to be forwardly placed, which should give him the jump on some of the other runners who tend to run a little later. And I like his chances. Oh, and incidentally, you're getting 6 to 1 on him, and I think that's a pretty square price. Cagliostro, Cherie DeVaux's been very high on this one. Got Christian Torres, the leading jockey at Oaklawn, on him for this one, so that's a good sign. Made a big jump in his last race, a 21-point buyer improvement, and really the only reason he lost the race is he stopped paying attention in the stretch, and that isn't a surprise. It's only his 3rd start, so this one's still a little green, but he's definitely got talent, and he displayed it in his maiden win on Lecomte, and the only question is whether or not he can make an appreciable jump to be considered a major contender in here. I think this one is showing all the signs of improving. I'm not sure it's at quite the same level as the others, and I think maybe later in the year this horse will be better. But I'm going to use him right now mainly because he's forwardly placed. He should be, which again I think is a good place to be in this race. And I think that because he's showing signs that he's going to advance, I think it's likely that he'll be a factor. Now you're getting him at 12 to 1 on the morning line. I think that's a really nice price on this one. So he's a liberal use for me. Single ruler is, Keith Desormeaux loves to run his horses on big stakes days and have them fire. He did so with this one in the Lecomte, who won nicely at 18 to 1. The Risen Star, he didn't run bad. If you note from the replay, he was flying late, but he still only got 5th, and he was no factor in the race. Obviously, they had to keep this horse well back and then make one big run to try to get into the money. If you look at he is improving, but his buyers aren't really progressing significantly. So I think this one is kind of running out of room for improvement. Because of the way he'll likely run, you might get him on the bottom of the Trier Super at nice odds, but he's probably a toss for me unless I get really big odds with him. Tappett's Conquest, we've been waiting forever, haven't we? Excuse me, or it seems that way, for him to finally put it together and run a big one. I think I'm done waiting, and I'm going to tell you why. Look past the great connections. Bobby LaPenta, Manny Franco's on him, Brad Cox killing it at Fairgrounds. Pedigree says 2 turns. We keep waiting, right? Now, look at his 3-year-old year. He debuted in that allowance race, and he didn't win, and it looked like he probably should have won, but he wasn't really paying attention in the stretch. Okay, we'll give him. He's a Tappet. We know that might happen. But the Risen Star, he again, he was right in the race, but he really didn't continue on with the rest of them. And you can see he was 4th by a length and a half and had finished up 3 1/4. So he pace-wise, he fell off. And if you look at his pace numbers, that's what's indicative of, is that he really was having trouble keeping up. And that's a big surprise, and particularly when you consider he only got an 85 buyer and he got an 84 in his debut. So as we've seen with a lot of the other Cox 3-year-olds, maybe he's not as good as we thought he was. But I still think that he's got the talent to factor. It's kind of like Cyclone Mischief. You know, you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't with him. You kind of have to use him. I'm going to in this case, but I don't think he's a win candidate. And what really is frustrating is that you're likely not going to get good odds on him because of his connections and because he's a Cox. So I'm going to use him, but I'm not happy about it. And if I can get better odds on another, perhaps I'll take him. Dennington is one that, you know, he is improving, but to a degree. I mean, that last race was pretty good. But if you look, his stakes company, he has not fared well. And particularly when they've tried to have him run a little more forwardly, that hasn't worked well either. What seems to be working for him is being a one-run closer, coming from behind late. And that last race, while it was a win, it was more a question of Cagliostro not paying attention in the stretch as opposed to this one winning the race. The other thing to note is his class level has stayed the same, meaning he ran at the same class level for both the Lecomte and the optional claimer. Well, what does that mean? The Lecomte is a graded stakes race. Obviously, the class is higher. And he ran it at the class level he did, and look where he ended up, 4th. Drops in class to the optional claimer, runs at the same class level, it's a win. So that doesn't show improvement, it just shows a plateau. So in this race, now he's jumping up in class again, you would have to believe you're probably going to get the same type of result. You're going to get a mediocre performance that probably won't factor. Now, if you can get odds on this one, can he get to the bottom of the try of the Super? Sure. But that's the best he's going to do. And like I say, I don't see the signs that he's moving forward. And at 12-1, he's a major league underlay. I got to have 20-1 or better to even consider using this one in the exotics. Jason's Road, we've been waiting for this one to run, and for his patience, what does he get? He gets the 11th hole on a track that doesn't favor early pace with a monster stretch that he's got. So he's got to overcome a lot. Now, we know that he doesn't like the slop, and hopefully it's not going to rain for his sake on Saturday. So we draw a line through those two races because we know he doesn't like it. So really the only race we have to evaluate him with is the Gun Runner. And we could see, you know, out of the fairgrounds, he wired the field. So that's pretty impressive, and he did against some pretty good horses. Raise Kane won the Gotham, and determinedly has been a competitive 3-year-old at fairgrounds all the way along. So there's some talent there, and you know, Giroux stays on, which I also think is a very positive sign. That Cox took him off Tappett's Conquest. So perhaps there's some more promise with this one. I think he's going to have it his own way on the lead if he decides to go there, and he may inherit it by default because there's not a lot of early pace. And if he's good enough, maybe he can wire the field. I'm not so sure that's possible. I think Instant Coffee is Cox's better bet, but it is something you have to consider. At 12-1, I don't know if I want to try to beat the favorite with that type of strategy, but it's something to think about, and you might consider using him under the right circumstances. But I'm kind of back and forth with this one. I'm leaning towards tossing him right now, but you know, with the right amount of value, I might consider using. So I wouldn't try to talk you out of using him at all. Baseline beater is simply not good enough. That's the bottom line to this one. You can see 74 career high buyer in his last race, breaking his maiden. This is a big ask to move up into stakes, and I haven't seen the progression with this one to tell me he's going to do anything but what he has been doing, which is just a late run, and maybe he can get into 4th or 3rd with a late run at boxcar odds. That's really the only appeal with this one. Neil Pessin's a nice trainer. He's having a nice meet, and he likes to have his horses run big on stakes days. So I think this one will do the best that he can. It's just not good enough. If I'm going to use him, it's the bottom of the try, the Super, and I better have really big odds if I'm going to do it. So that's the field. Let's take a look at the top 5 of the Louisiana Derby and see what we have. Our top five for the Louisiana Derby are: number one, Instant Coffee. He hasn't done anything wrong, and he's a deserving favorite at 2-1. And I would definitely think he's a liberal use all the way through my tickets. Number two is Sun Thunder. He has improved steadily, and I expect another jump here. I think he's going to be a little more forwardly placed than he usually is, and with another step, then I think he's definitely a contender and could possibly win him under the right circumstances. Number three is King's Barnes. Again, another one who's making some big jumps forward. He's going to be in a good position up near the lead, and tactically he may have an advantage over King's Barnes or some of the other horses run a little later. If he takes another step forward, I think he's a win candidate, definite use. As we noted, number four is Tappett's Conquest. Reluctantly, I'm using him because who knows if he does get it together, he could factor in this race. But for the reasons stated, I think I'm kind of reluctant. So if you can find value elsewhere, I would take it. Number five is Cagliostro. Again, he's another one on the upturn. I'm not sure he's going to improve at a level appreciable enough to be a serious contender here, but he is improving, so I think it's a good possibility that he could be a contender in this race, and I think you'll get decent value. So that's our look at the Louisiana Derby, and I hope our analysis helps you with your decision making. I think it's far from a lock for Instant Coffee. There's a lot of good opportunity there, and I think it's a really good betting race. I will have a video for you later this week on the Jeff Ruby Stakes at Turfway. That'll be run on Saturday as well, so be on the lookout for that. And of course, if you do like what you see here, please like and subscribe. We really do appreciate it and love to see this community continue to grow so we can all be right at the wire. Be well. Talk to you soon.